All right, good morning, y'all. Welcome to the I Choose How podcast live show. Hope you guys are doing great on this Monday morning, June 22nd. I know I'm a little late to this, but I'm not a native New Yorker, but I'm from Barbados. But I've been living in New York now for about 20 years. And ever since I've been living in New York, I've been, kind of been a fan of basketball, but um, growing up in New York in the early 2000s, or even if you were here in the '90s, it was tough being a Knicks fan. All right. So I want to say congratulations to the New York Knicks, man. The New York Knicks are champions, right? They're champions finally. So that's great to see, man. I just never thought that would. I wasn't sure that was going to happen in my lifetime, right? Because you kind of get accustomed to the idea that the Knicks we're just gonna, each season, maybe or may not make it to the playoffs. So just to see that they have gotten this far and won, I'm definitely happy for them. I'm happy in particular for my who is also um, she's a nutritionist for both Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart. And so that particular friend of mine, I also produce her podcast. Her podcast airs the same day as mine. Her podcast just airs 3 hours earlier. But you can check her podcast out. That's called Best Life by You with Julia Felipa. But I'm really happy for her. And, I was just telling her that, like, I want you to think about the fact that you started this work with Jill ago, now the NBA champion, and do better. They recover. There's more energy, and I want you guys to think about this one thing, right? There's a lot of conversation around the Knicks being able to come back the way that they did. If I believe, I'm not sure if the statistic is right, but I believe the Knicks came back about 6 different times being down by a significant number of points. So um, you really need that like energy, that extra energy to push it. Now, am I saying that you need to be plant based to have that type of energy? I'm not saying that, but I am saying that I do think that plant based does give you an edge. And when I look at Jalen, the way that he performs, yes, he is an athlete, but um, he's definitely doing it in a way that it looks effortless, and I think he's in a really good place with his diet. I think he's in a really good place with his conditioning. He strikes me, when you have everything balanced, even your gut health is good as well. So I do think that that played a major part in why he did so well these last 3 years, why he did so well this particular season, and the Knicks are champions for the first time in 53 years. So again, shout out to the Knicks. That was definitely amazing. I'm really happy for them. And I'm not gonna stand here like I was a Knicks fan, right? I got to a point by the time I moved to New York or moved to America in 2006. I was pretty much I was pretty much a fan of good basketball, and I was kind of a fan of like LeBron James, just kind of following him, following his career, just trying to see what he was doing. And again, I was in my teens, between 13 and 16. So, um, just see this young guy who's, out of college, not out of college, I mean, fresh out of high school, just dominating the big leagues the way that he did, and is still doing it right now, even into 2026, 23 years later. So this amazing to watch. Um, so yeah, the Knicks are champions, and I want you guys to take a look at this. I've been kind of sharing it on my socials as well, as we're talking about with Jalen Brunson, who, as I know, has been eating mostly plant based. I believe he's on a 80% plant based diet. So I want to share with you a shirt that we've been promoting and pushing, which is just him being plant powered, being a plant powered athlete, plant powered champion. So I definitely want to promote him in that way and promote just plant based living in general. I'm just trying to find that here. Just try to put that on the screen so you guys can have a chance to purchase that. Um, it's a really cool shirt. It's not crazy expensive. It's about 23.94. Just gonna put it up on the screen here. So that's a Jalen Brunson plant-based and a champion T-shirt. So if you guys want to go ahead and get that, it's a really cool T-shirt, and so it has the picture of him where he's holding up the trophy, and then the Knicks players were actually behind him. I just have it blurred out. And then if you notice at the bottom, it says plant based and a champion. So you guys can take a look at that, check that out, pick up that shirt. So it's pretty cool. And then on the back of that is the I Choose Health logo. Um, I just want to promote plant based living, not because I have, some agenda or whatever it is. Like, I been doing this lifestyle for the better part of 20 years now. um so that is the lifestyle that supported me in everything that I do for my work, as a personal trainer, and as an athlete as well. So I definitely think that it's important for us to really really re-examine how we eat, overall, but then also in particular in regards to performance, because for a long time it was thought that um, the idea of physical strength and performance being connected to or even linked or even being in the same sentence as vegan or plant-based, that was something that people were like, oh, there's no way that those two things should ever be in the same sentence. But now we're starting to see a lot more, and as you guys have seen on my channel, from Robert Cheek, and who Robert Cheek wrote The Plant Based Athlete. And I think that book was revolutionary because it got athletes thinking about nutrition and diet differently. Um, so, you know, again, you have guys like Novak Djokovic and Lewis Hamilton, and of course, so I think it really is time to think differently about that. I'm not going to get into much about plant based this morning in regards to athletic performance, but I want to talk about it from the perspective of weight loss. All right. And I wish I had included pictures here because I want to kind of share my own experience growing up and being overweight the majority of my life. And overweight. Um, I was overweight from the age of 8 up until I was about 20 years old. And so when I turned 20 years old, I had already been vegan for about 3 years, but it was time for me to kind of really kick it into high gear and to eat in a healthy way. And so one of the things I want to talk about is why vegan diets support natural weight loss. And there's still work on your part to do, right? Um, as you can see there, we've mentioned with those diets, they're high in fiber, they're nutrient dense, low inflammation, which of course is going to be good for the gut. But there were a lot of things that I had to learn and little habits that I was still continuing, um, still habits I was continuing being a vegan 3 years in, right? I was still, drinking a lot of sugary juices. So instead of, mostly consuming water throughout the day, sometimes I was still, drinking like some Mott's apple juice or some Welch's passion fruit juice, right? And you think, well, it's fruit juice, so what's wrong with it? But then again, it's loaded with again added sugars, refined sugars. And then for most of my clients, I usually try to, when I'm giving them some guidance on nutrition. Now, I want to make it clear I'm a certified personal trainer and a certified nutrition coach. So I'm not able to necessarily give nutrition advice. I'm able to give guidance on certain things that you can do around nutrition as it relates to your specific goal. So if let's say you're trying to build muscle, I can give nutrition guidance in regards to building muscle. But in terms of giving you writing out a whole diet and breaking down things in terms of macros, even though I can do that as well. And sometimes I still do that for some of my clients. I have their statistics, so I can kind of work with that. Especially a lot of times when they come to me and I put them on the InBody machine, and I'm able to take a look at their body fat and muscle percentage, and kind of be able to work from there and working out what we call your TDEE, your total daily energy expenditure. And so we're able to work out a couple of things from there in addition to their macros. But then in terms of them developing a diet, I give them a guide. But basically, it's really good for them to work with an actual nutritionist that's certified in that and has done their work in that. Um, so yeah, don't come to me uh, for plans or for me to write out particular things. Like that's not what I can do for you. That is something that um, that a nutritionist, actual nutritionist or dietitian should be doing for you. But yeah, kind of reflecting on my time as as a young kid growing up overweight, having recently switched to being vegan. Actually, let's go back to being. Let's go back before that. 8 years old, right? 8 years old. Um, Actually, let's go back before it. So when I was about 6 years old, I was actually a skinny kid around 6 years old, and I had developed, I think it was it worms? Or they call like I think they call it worms, where you have this issue in your stomach, and so I, I'm from the Caribbean, so we say worms. If you guys know it as anything else, let me know in the chat. And also, wherever you are in the country, just let me know in the chat below. But we call it worms. And so I'd taken this medication, probably like a deworming medication, to get rid of it. And then that kind of led to me like eating more. So I started to eat more. And you could say between the ages of 6 and 8, my diet just got out of hand. Right, I started eating way more food. Now, look, I love my mom. You can probably sit in this life and say, "Hey, that's not your fault. Your mom didn't do what was right." My mom, for the most part, did her best with the knowledge that she had. Again, I'm a kid that was born in the '90s, and we're still getting more advanced information in regards to diet and nutrition. So you can say what you want about my mom or whatever, but she did the best that she could. So yeah, so between the ages of 6 and 8, again, as I said, I had that deworming medication to get rid of it, and then started to eat out of hand. You got rid of worms, but then started eating more and more, and so by the time I'm 7, 8, overweight, and I'm struggling with my physicality and diet, and I just remember one time my mom and we were running for a bus. Now, if you're familiar with the way that the hills are in the Caribbean, right? There's where we were situated. There's you go to the top of the hill to get this bus that takes you into town. And I remember running with my mom. And mind you, my mom, if I'm 8, my mom had to be about 42, 43, right? And I'm running with my mom, and you would think as a young kid, right, that my energy should be up there, that I have way more energy than my mom. But that wasn't the case. And I don't even know if my mom knows about this, but I remember running up that hill and just being like, one, I couldn't keep up with my mom, and you know, I was like, oh, this is not good. You know what I'm saying? Even at 8 years old, realizing that. Um, but still, then I still had it much about my diet, and there was some fault me by that. I figured that as long as I was a good kid, yeah. So um, first, hopefully it remains stable. Hopefully, yeah. So just go back on what I was going through. Um, as I said, between the ages of 6 to 8, just having to deal with that whole thing with the worms incident, and then having to deworm my body. That was really. Um, and so, as I said, again, 8 years old, being overweight, um, and then having to realize that I was, so much. I was big, right, and I couldn't keep up with my mom. It was insane, man. So, as I was stressing before, that for parents, it's really important to enforce a positive self-image. You know what I'm saying? Like, and to let them know, like, give because think about it, right? All right, y'all. So it seems to be some issues with my Wi-Fi. I'm not even sure what's going on. It's funny because I have Optimum, and Verizon was actually trying to solicit me the other day to come to them. And I think Verizon, they probably have higher speeds. So I might give them a call back and see if I can get a higher Wi-Fi service. But just to share my experience, man, like that was the issue growing up. And so again, that's 8 years old, and between the ages of 8 and 13, um, again, I was into sports, right? So then the other thing was thinking that I was telling I noticed my brother, who was 10 years older, he's also overweight, but then he's still playing sports, and he's still playing sports relatively well. So I'm thinking, well, if he's playing sports as a as a big guy, big kid, and is able to perform well, then what's wrong? What's wrong with me being big and still performing well? And again, these are little lies that we tell ourselves, right? As kids to protect ourselves from the ridicule or the pain of the situation. And I again, first lie was thinking, all right, if I'm a good kid, it doesn't really matter if I'm overweight or not. As long as I'm a good person, that's fine. But the issue is you being overweight or being healthy has nothing to do with your morality, right? But the science is showing also that how you eat and how you live could have an impact on your overall morality, right? There were some studies even showing that people who eat higher or have a higher consumption of meat products tended to be more aggressive, right? More aggressive in their interactions with others, friends, family, and to be honest with you, I see that with some people who eat or who consume large amounts of meat or flesh. They tend to be a little bit more aggressive, and this is not me trying to speak pejoratively about anybody that eats continues to eat meat. I am not talking down anybody that's doing that. People have their reasons for what they do, why they do. Um, but yeah, from that was the first lie of telling myself that I was a good person, so it doesn't matter if I'm overweight. But then at 11, 12, 13, I started playing competitively. I can Barbados cricket is or not. So if you do, kudos. Um, and then also let me know where you guys are from in the chat. I'm really interested to know where you guys are from. Again, as I said, I'm in New York City now, which, as you know, is a big melting pot, and so many of us who are from different Caribbean islands. But anyway, so I'm playing cricket and I do start to eat a little bit better. I do start to work out a little bit more because I realized that obviously it had to be in shape for this game that I'm playing outside all day in the blazing Caribbean heat. Um, so I did that. Was still overweight, but I did the best of my ability to to work through that. So then, fast forward to 2005, right? 2005. I'm going to church, and this kid named Keenan. Keenan was the son of one of the pastors in the church, and Keenan was a year older than me. Keenan was 16, but Keenan was significantly overweight. And unfortunately for Keenan, Keenan went on a school trip, and then on this particular school trip, he had a situation. I think he suffered an enlarged heart, and as they're trying to get him medical attention, if I'm remembering the story correctly, and it's crazy to think it's been 21 years. It's been 21 years since Keenan died, and such a good guy, such a sweet person, and to see him lose his life, specifically in relation to him being overweight. And I was at 16 years old. Now, I didn't know that that was possible. I didn't know that at 16 years old, you could die of an enlarged heart, you know, as it regards to your size. So that already disrupted my theory of, well, if I'm a good kid, it doesn't matter if I'm overweight. So then that really made me start thinking about eating better, living better. But I hadn't fully bought in as yet, right? I hadn't fully bought in as yet. So 16 is when I then moved to the US in 2006. Um, and between 2006 and 2010, I have a little bit of a more of a spiritual awakening, and then thinking that I wanted to have my own religious experience. I think a lot of us grew up as kids and we religiously live like vicariously through our parents. A lot of us don't have our own personal or religious experience, right? And I know I'm supposed to be talking here on why vegan diets support natural weight loss, and I'm giving my whole backstory, but I'm gonna quickly move on. Um, but I wanted my own like personal religious experience with God, and so 2020 was a religious awakening. Oh, sorry, I'm skipping the most important part. And then 2007 was when I finally took the step to say, hey, I'm going vegan, right? So that is, I believe that was July 3rd or July 4th. I decided to go vegan. Funny thing, and I've told this story before. The funny thing with this part is that I was, again, no job. I'm still in high school, living with my sister and her husband, and I remember them buying me that particular week, buying me some herring. Now, growing up in the Caribbean, I loved eating smoked herring fish, and the way that we would prepare it, we would get like a we would. Oh, my bad. Whoa, I just burped on live. I'm so sorry. Um, we would get like a grill and we would put it over some leaves in the back of the house, and we would smoke this herring, and we would cut this herring up, rip it up, and do it with some tomatoes and onions or whatever, and we put that in bread, and it was just the best tasting thing to me, right? So my sister and my brother-in-law, they knew that this was what I liked, so they bought me this particular thing, and I had already made a decision I was going vegan, so I wasn't touching it. And it sat in the fridge for a good couple of weeks, and they were like, "Yo, what's going on? Like, why is the herring still in the fridge? Like, what's going on?" And that's when I told them, like, I'm vegan. I don't know how y'all were gonna, you know, deal with that or support that. And they were like, "Look, man, just you could just tell us that you were going vegan, and we would just support it the best way that we could." And so I was thankful in that regard that that was their response, because I know a lot of families that when people do transition to being vegan, some families are not supportive. So I'm thankful to my brother-in-law and my sister for being supportive of me at that time. So that was, again, I was 16, 17. That was 2000. Oh wait, yeah, 2006. 7. I think I went vegan 2007. So this is my 19th year being vegan. Um, Next year is 20 years. So, and went vegan, but then I get to 20 and I'm overweight still, and I'm struggling with my weight, and I'm like, I gotta figure this out, man. Like, I can't be vegan and overweight. Like, how do I go to certain places and then justify me being vegan and being overweight? And at this time I was probably about 30, 40 pounds overweight. So I'm like, nah, we gotta fix this. So I actually took my veganism a step further and went raw vegan, right? Which means, and there's two different ways that you can do like raw vegan. You can uh, cook foods that are cooked at less than 112 degrees Fahrenheit, right? Or you can make sure you're not cooking foods at all, and everything you're eating is completely raw, right? Everything from, your sweet potato, although it's kind of hard to eat sweet potato raw, to your corn. And sometimes I was doing that, eating just straight up raw corn and kale and my apples, fruits, veggies. I was doing all of that completely raw, and I did raw on and off for about 3 months. Still went back to being, still vegan, but then I was eating less. So that was like the winter of 2010, and then by the summer of 2011, I had lost about 70 pounds. So lost that weight. I was mostly eating natural, right? So the more naturally you can eat, right? And I spoke about this on my friend's podcast the other day, the same Julie I was talking about. And even if you go back, you can debate it as much as you want, about whether or not this was a diet that was ordained for us by God, like a plant-based vegan diet. But again, the science continues to support that our bodies thrive, our bodies perform better under a vegan plant-based diet. So that's the science there. And any time that you don't see that science in abundance, it's not that people are not writing papers. Like people like that I've had on this podcast, Adam Sudd, I don't want to quote, but I think Dr. Michael Clapper, Matthew. There isn't any peer reviewed. All right, let's come back here. All right, so hopefully it's still running. But so yeah, so the science is there. So don't let anybody tell you that there's no science to back that up. There's tons of science. We're seeing athletes year after year, performing well, and then outperforming their peers as well. We have another friend of mine in Tori Washington, or just a friend of the podcast, Tori Washington, who is, you know, going to be competing. He's going to be the first vegan competing at the Mr. Olympia this year. So, as I said, um, what. All right, guys, sorry about that. All right, but let's go to the next thing, right? But we're seeing that plant-based eating, plant beating. That's funny. Plant-based eating is actually a metabolic advantage, and you know there's a couple reasons as to why it is a metabolic advantage, right? Because you know when you're eating plant-based, the foods digest a lot quicker, right? So then there's not really much of an issue with gut issues and stuff like that. So, those are things that you can quickly and easily, deal with and rectify. So, as I said, man, when you switch over to plant based eating, it is a metabolic advantage. Your body breaks down quick, breaks the food down quicker. And, I guess I said, your body overall just feels better, right? Um, So there's that when it comes to plant based eating. And the second thing that I want to kind of highlight or look at is that again these foods are lower in calorie, right? So a lot of times when it comes to things like greens and stuff like that, you can eat these things in abundance. It's just being careful of like what a lot of vegans fall into, the trap that a lot of vegans fall into is doing the over processed foods, right? So you're gonna grab these fruits and veggies, but now we're gonna, process them a certain way and kind of take them out of their natural form. And I think that's one of the unfortunate things with a lot of vegans is that that is usually the thing that they go to, and I'm not gonna lie, I've been vegan for 20 years, but sometimes I kind of fall back into the all right, let me go grab something that's processed, right? Or go grab some type of like sugary food, right? And I think that that's a issue with a lot of us, and that's something that I think a lot of us need to overcome is just limiting our intake of processed. And I think that's not just a vegan problem. I think that's just everybody in general. Like I think a lot of us eat a lot of processed foods. All right. So the less processed foods that we can eat, the better of a metabolic advantage it is for us. All right. So just try to really limit those. And this live, I really did as a trainer trying to come from a realistic perspective and a relatable perspective to help you lose the weight, right? And I'm not coming from a place of I've always, because you have those trainers who've never lost any weight that have, sorry, that have never been overweight, right? That don't know what it's like to grow up in school and be teased and be ridiculed for being the, fat kid. Um, so what's his name? I had Drew Manning on last year on the podcast. He is, I don't know if you know him, but if you've ever watched the show Fit to Fat to Fit, this show is on A&E and Lifetime, and the concept of it was getting personal trainers to meet with a client, and they would gain weight. So they would gain 40, 50, 60 pounds and then lose the weight with the client. And so that made the client feel like, oh well, I have this support, like I have somebody who feels what I feel, feeling like when I'm going up the stairs and I get winded, I'm out of breath, I'm not feeling well, right? Or just feeling icky in public, right? You walk around, you maybe feel that your chest is not tight and you feel, the wiggles in your body from the fat jiggling. And again, I'm saying this not to speak negatively on anybody's overweight. I'm speaking from a perspective that I had to deal with growing up as a kid, and then going into my early 20s being overweight. So again, just try to keep it natural, but I want to also say keep it natural and keep it tasty, right? So the problem is a lot of times is that people when they try to switch their diets, a lot of times they go too hardcore. They go way too hardcore. So now they go and they'll do try to do everything 100% raw. It's not tasty, and then when it's not tasty, let's keep it a buck. It's not going to be sustainable because at some point you can be like, yo, I need something different, man. This I don't like the taste of this at all. Like, let's just keep it a straight buck. Like you know that that's not going to be something that you could really sustain. So um, whenever you do change your diet, try to make sure that it is something that is sustainable, right? And now let's get to exercise, right? How can we really now um, get in an exercise system that is easy and sustainable? All right. So I want to break it down into three things, right? Resistance training, cardio training, right? And then conditioning, right? Um, so resistance training. A lot of times we try to make it complicated. You can start with your compounds, right? And when I say compounds, you compound lift from your squat to your deadlift to your rows to your shoulder, your presses, right? Um, get control of those things, right? So with resistance training, if you want to start out, obviously you want to start with um, your particular dynamic stretches and a dynamic warm up to get the body ready for movement and for lifting. Um, let's start with these particular lifts. So if you were going to say, all right, today I'm going to squat or today I'm going to deadlift, start with that, right? Start with those particular lifts and challenge yourselves on that, right? So if you, when I try to check and see where my client's one RM is or one rep max is, and I tend to try to push that a little bit. Um, that first time around, I might just start with just a bar. And then as we move on, I try to see where they can kind of push it to. Now that you kind of know where that is, um, and you can kind of now decide what your reps and sets are going to be, then we do that, right? So now this week we're deadlifting, we're squatting, we're doing that for a certain period of time, right? We're doing that for a certain period of time, and let's say we're doing that for 30 minutes. 30 minutes, so 20, 30 minutes. You don't need more than that. You're lifting for those 20, 30 minutes. And that could include things like your farmer walks and your compounds, right? Including those two things. Once you've got that resistance training out of the way, I want you to then try to move into cardio. And that can look like, being on a treadmill and ideally putting that on an incline, significant incline. And I would say somewhere between 12 to 15%. All right. So putting on that 12, 15%, and then going from that to then increasing your speed. So that speed, I would say, start your speed out. If you're somebody that's like, all right, I'm really overweight, I'm not conditioned at all, you're fully deconditioned, then definitely try to do um, I would say about a 2 speed, 2 to 2.5. Don't go any higher than that starting out. And as you get a little bit more comfortable, then you could bump it up to 3 and 3.5, right? But yeah, stay with that, and you're gonna do that for a while, right? Let's be honest. You have to continue to do cardio, all right? And we do that for starting out. If you can do 20 minutes, do 20 minutes. Then we want to bump it up to 30. And I wouldn't even really push it past 30 until you've gone to that stage where you're like, I really love working out, my body feels great, and I want to push it past that. But I would stay between that 20 to 30 minutes. And there you have it. You have about an hour workout per day. Now you've gone from not working out at all to now you're doing at least 300 minutes of movement each week, right? 300 minutes of movement each week. And now you're eating the right way, you're eating less, right? And then just coming back to the idea of just conditioning. And when I say conditioning, I'm talking now about mental and physical conditioning, right? Reconditioning your mind about the way that you thought about diet, the way that you thought about exercise, the way that you thought about time management and planning, the way you think about health overall. So that is the idea of dealing with your conditioning, dealing with the way that you're thinking about life and thinking about everything around you. When you've reconditioned all those things, it's going to help you maintain your health, because now it's going to reconnect you to your why and why you do everything that you do, right? And so as long as you have a very strong why, right? A very strong why. For me, initially in the beginning, I wanted to be healthy, but then I wanted to also feel like at that time that I felt like I was in alignment with what God wanted. Now, you could critique me as being this, you would critique anybody with this why as being somebody that's, overzealous in their religious faith. But that was what I felt at the time. I felt like, well, this is what I need to feel like I'm in alignment with God. But if you think about it, that's a very strong why. If your why is connected to something that is deeply religious and is balanced, because there are a lot of religious things out there that are not balanced. But if you're having a why that has its roots in a religious experience, um, it can be a very deep why, and it can make you have a develop a long term healthy behavior. So that can be exercise and meditation. And so that was usually my morning. I wake up at 4 a.m., get up, pray, read my Bible first thing. So I was conditioning my mind first and just having a strong why. And then moving from that into, all right, next thing is gonna be exercise, right? And then everything I was just trying to, develop a better routine. So I would do my exercise, come back, prepare the day, get into just being up to date with what's going on in the news and stuff like that. So just preparing myself for the world, preparing myself for whatever was coming my way. And as long as you can do those things and just keep those that consistent, you should be able, for the most part, to keep the weight off, right? Um, and I think that's the part that people have a difficult time doing, right? Keeping the weight off. And so, as long as you are keeping these habits in place, right? As long as you are maintaining to mostly eat fruits and veggies, um, and balancing everything out, making sure that you're not eating too many calories, making sure that you're not eating too much of the wrong things, just limiting, stopping the process, or not eating too much processed foods. Um, then you should just start to see that your ability to keep the weight off gets easier, right? And then again, keeping that consistent workout base, right? And again, as you develop over time, you can start to add different things. You can start to add AMRAPs and EMOMs and a complexity in your workout schedule. But I think it's really important to just be patient with yourself and just really grow from there. I've talked enough, but I hope you guys definitely have a great one. I'll see you guys hopefully soon. Again, I'm trying this restream. This is new for me. Um, so yeah, I hope you guys have a good one. Please follow and subscribe. We are trying to grow this channel. So we are going to be doing probably a couple of live streams per day. So we'll see how it works. My schedule is crazy. I have, I still do group fitness. I still have private clients. I still run this podcast, and then I produce another podcast as well. So we'll see. I'm trying to manage it. And then on top of that, of course, I'm a father as well. And if you're a father watching, happy Father's Day, or happy belated Father's Day to you. This is the day after. And, let that be a why as well, being a healthy father. And for those of you who, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but we do have the Healthy Girl Dad t-shirts. It's the same place that we're selling the Jalen Brunson t-shirts. I'll put a Jalen Brunson t-shirt back up on the screen. Let me just put that back up there. So we are selling that Jalen Brunson t-shirt, but I'm going to see if I can put the Healthy Girl Dad up really quickly. Let me just put that up here as well. So we do have the t-shirt, we do have the hoodie, and then we do have a hooded tank top as well, if you're trying to look sexy while you're working out. But I'm going to put that t-shirt there. I'm going to put the hoodie up as well. So I'm going to put it up on the screen quickly. Let me just start there. All right, so I'm going to put the Healthy Girl Dad hoodie up first. That was the very first product that I had put out, the Healthy Girl Dad. So you guys can check that out. Really, really premium quality hoodie. It's the best hoodie that I own. It will keep you nice and warm. The fabric is amazing, feels great. So get that Healthy Girl Dad hoodie. Everywhere that I'm wearing it, people are like, oh wow, I really like that hoodie. And yeah, definitely check that out. And then we have the snow washed boxy hooded tank top. So you guys can check that out here as well. So we have it that logo, and then the I Choose Health logo of that. And then that, please, sorry, internet's just a little slow sometimes to show, but that, oh, I think I put the tank top up. My bad. Let me just put the t-shirt up. I don't know why it's not showing. Let's see. A separate person when you're live. All right, so the shirt. Let me know in the comments. Put a screen QR code, and then you guys can purchase those hoodies from those links. Let's put a Jalen Brunson back up just briefly. And again, go Knicks. Right, the Knicks have won their championship for the first time in 53 years. So that's amazing. If the Knicks can win a championship, you can drop that weight, man. Make this a summer that you get healthy. Um, you know, you live a life of more activity, more movement, happy, uh, moving a little bit more. Hope I was able to get into this, and hopefully some added impetus and added umph to get there and to change your life. But this is Stefan with the I Choose Health podcast. Reminding you that choosing health is about choosing power, possibility,